The head of a well-known non-offending pedophile activist group has been charged with raping 2 young children in Norway. Well, I guess they weren't actually non-offending then, eh? The group Virtuous Pedophiles, by the way, has been promoted by some academics and journalists as a harm reduction resource. All right, well, I already know that journalists aren't people. I guess we can add academics to that list, because if you're promoting something called Virtuous Pedophiles, you get the wood chipper too, you weird ass fuck. Why would you quote that? What? What the fuck? Director of prominent non-offending pedophile group arrested. The director of a pro-pedophile activist group has allegedly been arrested in Norway and charged with the rape of 2 children under the age of 14. The man, who has remained unnamed in Norwegian press but is known as Charlie online, was reportedly a primary school teacher in Rogaland and was arrested on July 9th. Imagine my shock. According to local news reports, Charlie was remanded to custody, placed under a contact ban, and held in isolation for the first 2 weeks of his 4-week detention period. He has pleaded not guilty to the charge of raping a minor, but was found in possession of child sexual abuse materials. Under Norwegian law, the sexual abuse of children under the age of 14 is treated as a serious criminal offense and can carry severe penalties. I don't know how custody works in Norwegian law, but it seems weird that they say held in isolation for the first 2 weeks of his 4-week detention period. Like, it's definitely going to be more than 4 weeks, right? I mean, I hope that it is. Charlie was released from police custody on August 13th and is awaiting trial, according to a co-director of the Virtuous Pedophiles, or VirPed group, who calls himself Marcus, and allegedly admitted to law enforcement that he had sexually abused a child several years ago. How can you make a group called Virtuous Pedophiles and anyone takes you fucking seriously? And secondly, how can you be an actual pedophile who is taking pedophilic action against minors and then claim that you're a non-offending pedophile? I fucking hate this shit, man. Oh my god. Members of the online pro-pedophile community have stated that at least one of the incidents of sexual abuse for which Charlie is charged occurred at a MAP community conference. Why were there minors at a minor attracted person community conference? Where are the parents, man? People bring kids to those? I certainly fucking hope not. Virtuous Pedophiles is a group founded in 2012 that purports to seek the de-stigmatization of pedophilia in order to facilitate harm prevention and personal support. No, see, there are some things that should not be destigmatized. Pedophilia is one of them. I don't know, man. This is a little, yeah, it's like NAMBLA almost. But like, NAMBLA at least tried to put effort into a subversive name, right? These guys are just like, yeah, Virtuous Pedophiles. Like, it's a little on the nose. Members acknowledge that they have a sexual attraction to children, but claim to want to lead normal, productive lives without abusing children. The group has repeatedly claimed they have a commitment to non-offending. They position themselves as a resource for journalists, academics, and public education on pedophilia. Wow. Do you guys remember when we were learning about POCD, pedophilic obsessive compulsive disorder? And they were like, if you have POCD, you're not actually a pedophile because you're disgusted at the fact that you're attracted to children. So if you have POCD and you're consuming child sexual abuse material to just confirm if you are a pedophile or not, that's okay. That's normal for you to be doing. And I'm just like, what the actual fuck am I reading? What the actual fuck? The charges levied against the VirPed director stand in direct opposition to the group's stated goals and call into question the group's claims about its own operation. It's crazy that we need to wait for something like this to happen to be like, Maybe the virtuous pedophiles group isn't actually as virtuous as they propose. I miss common sense, chat. On a page titled, "I am an adult pedophile," the VirPed site reads, "Don't panic! You are a pedophile, but it's only a part of who you are. You're not alone. There are a lot of people like you who have this attraction and still go on to live satisfying lives and never try to seek sexual activity with a child. Your attraction does not make you a bad person, and you did not choose to be a pedophile either." Are they really trying to do the like, oh, we're just like you gay people, we were born this way? Are they really still trying to do that? However, Charlie is being discussed sympathetically within the VirPed community despite the charges against him. "My heart goes out to him," wrote one forum member known as Gwen is Gone, who has listed their age of attraction as being between 1 to 12 years old. A 1-year-old is a barely sentient, like, sack of potatoes. What do you mean? What the actual fuck? It's been difficult dealing with this news ever since I found out, but I firmly believe Charlie to be a good and upstanding person. This will be an incredibly difficult time for him and our community. What's important is that we stand together and support each other through this process. This person's just like, this is incredibly important. We'll all finally know if we can actually go out and touch children based on what happens to him. Holy fuck, why is this group allowed? A German man who calls himself Consuela added, "I hope everything goes well for him and these accusations go away with nothing found. He is such a nice guy. He didn't do nothing." Forum moderator Patty Hopf said, "I am a moderator on VirPed doing this good work, and now my boss has been arrested on charges of going against the tenets of the organization. VirPed will not die. We are like cockroaches. We are small in a world that is out to get us, but we're too pervasive and resilient to be put down." I mean, at least he's right. They are like cockroaches. They're disgusting bottom feeders that should be stomped out as soon as any normal person sees them, right? Today on the VirPed forum, it was shared that the organization's director, Charlie, was arrested in Norway for child porn and contact offenses. An announcement was made by the organization's ex-director, temporarily back in post as part of VirPed's transparency commitments. While the unrelated incident involving the above-mentioned ex-director's behavior towards a younger person was clear-cut and did not result in prosecution, the details surrounding this arrest of the other director are far more murky, and it will likely take many months, if not years, to work its way through the formal investigation phase and then possibly court. If you have an organization called Virtuous Pedophiles, and both of the men who are directors of it have been arrested for contact with children, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire, is all I'm saying. Like, what the actual fuck? Having read the thread, the first thing I'd do is urge caution. Members say he was having trouble in some respect to his real-life contact with kids. And also note that in Norway, lolly show is illegal. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? So he may have been arrested off the back of a coercive parent's personal grievance, and then they found cartoons. He's been arrested for raping children. How the fuck are cartoons even a part of this conversation? Am I taking crazy pills, man? Members have also said that it is uncharacteristic he might be engaging in contact offending, but of course the fact it is VirPed might not be seen as particularly helpful with respect to confirmation bias. The incident has been the subject of debate within one of the internet's longest-running pro-pedophile forums, Boy Chat, where men gathered to discuss their sexual attraction to underage boys. Boy Chat has been in operation since 1995 and was founded by a self-described boy lover, and operates as a network for men to connect and discuss their pedophilic interest in boys, as well as strategies for promoting the normalization of pedophilia. I didn't know that this was a thing that existed, and now that I do know, I have to wonder, the people who post there have to know that they're being watched, right? Like, there's no way that this group exists and doesn't have federal agents in it. Zero way. The ignorance of 30 minutes ago is so blissful. Men involved in the boy chat community share tips on how to avoid law enforcement and advocate for sexual offending against minors. The terms pro-contact and no contact or anti-contact are used to differentiate between those who believe sex with minors should be legalized and those who claim to avoid acting on their urge to abuse. I don't really care what they claim. On July 16th, user John Holt announced that VirPed director Charlie had been arrested while suggesting that boy chat members should err on the side of caution. In Norway, lolly show is illegal, he stated, referring to lolicon and shota, two forms of Japanese illustrated child pornography. He may have been arrested off the back of a coercive parent's personal grievance, and then they found cartoons. Again, why are we even talking about the cartoons when he actually raped a child? And also, I know Canada has laws against it, and that's why for like the longest time, I don't know where Discord's based now, but like for the longest time, you couldn't post anything like that in Discord because it would get your server banned. Maybe that still happens. I have no idea. I don't pay attention to who owns Discord. I just assume it's a group of gay furries somewhere. The responses from boy chat members were varied, but several users have expressed a view that it is impossible to be a non-offending pedophile. The fuck does this say? Hug a VirPed. Oh, it's just like hug a Chinese during COVID. In his own words, not only was this a case of statutory harassment or assault, but seemingly a case of forcing oneself on another person aggressively. I wouldn't be throwing around allegations of sexual aggression based on some VirPed's hyperbole over having supposedly hurt someone, especially while you argue the point that their claims about what constitutes harms are fallacious. Another quote, it has hindered community attempts at rights-based progress in the process. And the person said, I call bullshit. No auntie ever need... How are they using our language, those bastards? No auntie ever needed a VirPed's help reinforcing the anti-C position. Oh, anti-contact. That makes sense. Okay. No auntie ever needed a VirPed's help reinforcing the anti-contact position. It would be nice if pro-contact pedophiles were more conciliatory and welcoming towards their mistaken VirPed brethren. Oh, it's literally a pedophile on pedophile slap fight. Especially when a VirPed has failed to live up to their own overly aesthetic ideals. Show them that it's not all fire and brimstone and ideological puritanism, and that it's okay to come over to our side of the pool. At least while we're not making poster children out of murderers. What the fuck? What am I even reading, bro? User Fragment wrote on July 16th, I think it's much worse when an anti-contact offends, both ethically and in terms of optics. As a pro-contact, my crimes are basically committed in alignment with my own sense of values and right and wrong. But an anti-contact committing those same crimes is violating their own deeply held code. My conscience is clean. Theirs is not. It's funny how the children can't consent meme is so strong in VirPed culture that no one is even talking about where it might have been a willing or unwilling encounter. If you fuck a kid and your response is, yeah, my crimes were committed in alignment with my sense of values, my conscience is clean. Bro, I can't even conceive of what type of torturous death should befall you. That is an insane fucking thing to say. I wish these were not real people. This is insanity. They're thinking more about the fucking optics than they are about children who got harmed. What the fuck? He was totally asking for it. Holy shit. In 2022, Redux became aware that a UK-based member of VirPed had been placing letters within books at public libraries. The letters pleaded for more tolerance toward non-offending pedophiles. The man behind the campaign, who calls himself Bly Reed, had the year before been promoted by Candice Christensen, a sex addiction therapist, who serves on the United Nations Human Trafficking Task Force, on her show titled The Prevention Podcast. Christensen is the creator of the website The Global Prevention Project, where she published submissions from self-professed pedophiles. I think I just took psychic damage from that paragraph. A man who placed letters in library books pleading tolerance for non-offending pedophiles was promoted by a sex addiction therapist on her podcast, where she publishes submissions from self-professed pedophiles. And she's also part of the United Nations Human Trafficking Task Force. I feel like it might be a conflict of interest if you're on a human trafficking task force while also publishing like pro-pedophilia accounts. I don't know. That might be a little bit of a conflict of interest, in my opinion. Similarly, members of both the VirPed and BoyChat forums have been solicited as participants in academic research. In 2023, Redux learned that a researcher at McGill University in Canada had been conducting a survey aimed at gaining insight from child lovers in online pedophile communities, including BoyChat. The survey featured images of naked children and asked participants to rate their attraction. But why did they have to be naked? I feel like you could have just used fully clothed pictures, right? Psychology PhD researcher Julia Levitan's survey titled Nature and Correlates of Romantic Attraction to Children asked respondents whether they identify as transgender, non-binary, or genderqueer. Interesting. The Lucy Faithfull Foundation, a UK-based child protection charity dedicated exclusively to preventing child sexual abuse, praises the virtuous pedophile community. What the fuck? On its official website, where the charity has given VirPed a rating of pioneering. The ECSA LucyFaithfull.org, preventing child sexual abuse, virtuous pedophiles. Type of intervention, an online mutual support group for minor attracted people, or MAPS, providing information and support. The site and members are committed to maintaining the safety of children and oppose abuse. I'm just gonna press X, honestly. Target population are people who identify as having a sexual attraction toward minors or are concerned about this. Delivery organization, Virtuous Pedophiles is a website which provides signposting, support resources, and information for MAPS. As an organization, they are committed to ensuring the safety and well-being and have an anti-CSA and anti-child sexual abuse imager stance. They seek to reduce the stigma associated with pedophilia to support MAPS in leading happy and law-abiding lives. Do you think that the UK is basically just like, hey, if we let these migrants continue raping all of our children, eventually they'll just let us rape the children too? Is that the kind of logic the UK is working on? Like, I just don't understand what the fuck I'm reading anymore. Mode and context of delivery, online peer support discussion forum and signposting for advice and support. The level and nature of staff expertise required, NA, intensity, extent of engagement with target groups, unknown. Description of intervention. MAPS concerned about their attraction can apply to join the online discussion group. Here, peer members provide advice and support to one another to enable members in leading fulfilling lives, learning to live with MAP status and preventing child sexual abuse. The Virtuous Pedophiles website has a range of information for individuals concerned about their sexual attraction, including links to professional support services in a range of countries and supportive advice for MAPs and people concerned about a friend or family member. The work of Virtuous Pedophiles has been supported by a range of professionals, including academic researchers in the psychology field, reads the charity statement, before linking to a series of testimonials posted on the VirPed website. Our supporters: Alan Walker, PhD, Research Associate, Department of Mental Health, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health; James Cantor, PhD, Associate Professor in the Department of Psychiatry of the University of Toronto's Faculty of Medicine, Editor-in-Chief of Sexual Abuse, a Journal of Research and Treatment, and a member of the editorial boards of the Journal of Sexual Aggression, the Journal of Sex Research, and Archives of Sexual Behavior. J. Michael Bailey, PhD, Professor, Department of Psychology, Northwestern University. Klaus M. Bayer, MD, PhD, Prevention Project Dunkelfield, Professor, Director of Institute of Sexology and Sexual Medicine, Charité Center for Health and Human Sciences, and Charité University Medicine, Berlin. Maya Christopher, Executive Director, Association for the Treatment of Sexual Abusers. David Prescott, Director of Professional Development and Quality Services of the Becker Family of Services, past President of the Association for the Treatment of Sexual Abusers. Juliet Grayson, former Chair of Stop SO. I don't know what that means, stopso.org.uk. Jenny Coleman, a Help Services Program Director, Stop It Now. Ray Blanchard, Professor of Psychiatry at the University of Toronto, former head of Clinical Sexology Services in the Law and Mental Health Program of the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. Served on the American Psychiatric Association's DSM-4 and on the DSM-5's work group on sexual and gender identity disorders. This is really interesting that Ray Blanchard is on there. Isn't Blanchard what a lot of trans activists claim is crazy because he's the one who talked about, like, autogynephilia being a problem? Yes, that's crazy. What did Blanchard have to say about this? People do not choose to be attracted to children or adults any more than they choose to be attracted to males or females. Not all pedophiles are child molesters or vice versa. Child molesters are defined by their acts. Pedophiles are defined by their desires. There are pedophiles and hebophiles. I had to explain hebephile to someone recently, and I was like, even though the word exists, anytime you try to explain what it is, you're just going to sound like a pedophile, so it might as well not exist, really, if you think about it. Who never act on their sexual attraction towards children. They cannot be blamed for what they feel, and they should be supported for the constant self-restraint they must exercise in order to behave ethically. I support Virtuous Pedophiles in its effort to reduce child sexual abuse by helping pedophiles to never molest children. We have Robin J. Wilson, Fred S. Berlin, David Finkelhor, Michael Seto, J. Paul Fedorov, Sarah Good. Sarah Good also has a name that sounds familiar to me, but definitely not as recognizable as Blanchard's. David Lay and Ian McPhail. Just a random psychology grad student at the University of Saskatchewan. The group has also been covered positively in dozens of mainstream media outlets. Why? In 2014, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation offered them praise in a profile titled Virtuous Pedophiles Group Gives Support Therapy Cannot. Isn't the CBC paid for with Canadian tax dollars? This was published in 2014. This is what Canadian tax dollars are paying for. What the fuck? Ethan Edwards, a man in his mid-50s last year, confided his deepest secret to a close friend that he was a pedophile. He's happy to keep my secret, Edwards wrote in an online chat with CBC News, too fearful of vigilantes to give out his phone number. But he says his friend now feels infected by his secret. Edwards, a pseudonym, only realized he was attracted to young girls a few years ago. He says he's never acted on it. I wish we knew his real name, because I'd be willing to bet since this interview in 2014, he's probably been arrested. Now he's devoting his energy to helping others, ensuring they too never victimize a child. Edwards, who says he's from Pennsylvania and is the father of 3 daughters, co-founded an online support group called Virtuous Pedophiles. Both of the directors have been arrested for acts against children. This doesn't say that he was a director, it says a co-founder, but I'm wondering, you know, it's a little interesting. The 330-member group, which is designed to help admitted pedophiles talk through their conditions and curb their desires, is completely anonymous. He's never even spoken on the phone with his co-founder, Nick Devon, also a pseudonym. Our prime goal in creating it was probably more the public relations aspect regarding the public, to help people see we're not all molesters. But along with that was also a desire to help the pedophiles who qualified. The website is a rare spot where pedophiles can acknowledge their problem and seek help to keep their impulses under control, without fear of being exposed to a world where hysteria about child molesters can cloud any understanding of and research into the problem of pedophilia. No, you see, I think where we have failed as a species is the fact that we stopped just executing child molesters as soon as they were caught. I feel like this is where we started having a downfall as a species. Of course, not everyone agrees with its purpose. The Virginia-based National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, for example, fears that sites like Virtuous Pedophiles operate merely under the guise of helping pedophiles remain celibate, but instead enables them to trade tips and tricks on how to groom children for sexual purposes. I mean, they don't really need a website called Virtuous Pedophiles for that. You can literally just go to Reddit, man. Like, Reddit is free, and there's tons of people there. You know, like, you could, yeah, that's just literally, why would you make a Virtuous Pedophiles group when Reddit is right there, dude? Like, you don't even have to call yourself a pedophile. Reddit is right there. What is this? Well, on the cover, you think there may be legitimate reasons and purposes. Not everybody who joins these groups has an altruistic motive, says John Sheehan, executive director of the Center's Exploited Child Division. But James Cantor, an internationally recognized expert on pedophilia at Toronto Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, calls it a wonderful organization that helps a largely invisible group support each other from committing crimes. Pedophiles often make the news in connection with massive child porn busts, such as last week's arrest in Britain of 660 suspected pedophiles who viewed indecent images. And Pope Francis recently waded into the controversy of pedophilia in the Catholic Church when he estimated that 2%, or roughly 8,000 of the church's 400,000 or so clergy, were pedophiles. What? How would he know that exactly? He went on to describe child abusers as a leprosy within the church. And I mean, he's not wrong. There's no conclusive figure on what percentage of society suffers from pedophilia. What a way to word that. And Cantor, who is an editor-in-chief of Sexual Abuse, a journal of research and treatment, says not enough is understood about the condition itself. One point he does make, though, is that pedophilia is different from child molestation. Pedophilia refers very specifically to the sexual interest, says Cantor. That's very different from people who actually act on the sexual impulse and sexually approach or touch a child. Edwards also says that distinction is important. Although a pedophile, he calls sex abuse a serious crime. A lot of pedophiles never sexually abuse a child and never would. Like, no chance at all, he said. But it's very hard to have to keep a big secret. I feel like it's not, and the only reason you tell people is because you partially get off on the thrill of doing something so taboo. In a world where there is a huge stigma attached to pedophilia, those with the condition are often intensely afraid to reveal their troubling thoughts to family and friends. I don't know why they're calling it a condition. Like, yeah, there's something fucking wrong with these people, but I'm not gonna be like, oh, he has depression. That's so sad. That's not how you treat pedophilia, man. What the fuck? At the same time, laws can also deter them from even speaking to their therapists. Across Canada, provincial rules require that mental health professionals must report a patient to authorities if they have reasonable grounds to believe that a specific child is at risk of being sexually molested or exploited. Isn't that good? What do you mean? It literally says a specific child, which means that if the therapist has probable cause of like, oh, this guy's gonna molest little Jenny at some point because he can't stop thinking about her specifically, that's different than some guy being like, I have an abstract attraction, right? Like, that's just literally like, oh, they can't admit that they want to rape little Jenny because then they might get reported to the police. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh my God. Because it's a crime. Like, there's just insanity. Tax dollars paid for this. The exact wording varies by jurisdiction, but often mental health professionals err on the side of caution due to fear of lawsuits, reporting even cases where the risk of someone acting on their impulses is not great, or where a patient's comments don't involve a specific child. That's because the normal human reaction to pedophilic thoughts is disgust and horror and wanting them to be taken away. The side effect of that is now people don't come into therapy in the first place. We have every reason to believe that those laws make things worse rather than better. We should be making it easier for people to come into therapy. We need to rewind things back to where doctor-patient privilege was doctor-patient privilege, period. You know, I'd be fine with that as long as if the doctor knew about the person's proclivities and then they went on to harm a child, the doctor got charged as an accessory. I'd be okay with that. Last year, Montrealer David Goldberg, a former local newspaper editor and minor baseball coach, wrote a candid column for the Atlantic magazine about his own arrest in 2012 as part of an international child porn bust. This man, Okay. All right. If I speak, I will be banned. I had never asked to be cursed with this sexual attraction, and I had never hurt a child, Goldberg wrote in the piece titled, I Pedophile. He was arrested in an international child porn bust. What do you mean you never hurt a child? After his arrest and 90 days in jail, he put his journalistic skills to work researching the root causes of pedophilia. He concluded it wasn't anything from his past, but was rather a sexual orientation. I hate this quote. In fact, scientists don't really understand what causes pedophilia. In Cantor's work, he scans the brains of pedophiles. Among his findings is that they tend to have IQs that are 10 points lower than the average person, plus lower memory scores. Well, that's not surprising. A larger portion of pedophiles are left-handed or ambidextrous than the general public. A finding similar to those with schizophrenia or autism. Okay, buddy. At this point, it is pretty undeniable that this is a brain phenomenon, although we have not yet been able to identify what's been affecting the brain development. Current research doesn't provide enough evidence to tie pedophilia purely to biological conditions, Cantor says, but it does eliminate the common argument that upbringing and environment are solely to blame. That leaves researchers like him and pedophiles who have not molested children to call for a focus on treatment rather than incarceration. As Goldberg wrote, until we as a society learn that help for those who view child pornography is a far better alternative to incarceration, we are doomed to see the continued proliferation of this problem. Many pedophiles, who often first notice their sexual interest in young children when they're in their teens or 20s, feel intensely afraid of the world discovering their secret. Edwards said many of his group's members not only fear therapists, but they feel like they're being viewed only as a potential offender and not a person when visiting a therapist. That leads many of them to anonymous groups like Edwards' Virtuous Pedophiles. In Germany, a project titled Prevention Project Dunkelfeld, which translates as Dark Fields, taps into that need for anonymity. The free program gives confidential treatment, no names required, by phone or Skype to those trying to control their pedophilia. The website says that no one will be condemned for their sexual preference, but everyone is responsible for their sexual behavior. With the help of specialized therapy, men with a sexual preference disorder can learn to act responsibly. If they're trying to convince people that pedophilia is a sexual preference disorder, what's stopping people from going, well, yeah, okay, being gay is a sexual preference disorder too, because that's not normal. What do they think is gonna happen if they manage to make people believe this en masse? Here in Canada, Cantor laments a system that prevents therapists from helping pedophiles. It's difficult to imagine such a curse. Who can they tell? From their point of view, they can't tell a therapist, they can't tell their parents, their peers, their boyfriends, girlfriends, said Cantor. They are as alone as a person can be. And in regards to pedophilia, they fucking should be, right? That's like, if you are, right, if you do have that attraction, you should just never say anything, never do anything. Just pretend you are a normal human being and never be around children, ever. And then maybe you can live some semblance of a normal life. They should be validated. I hate that, like, fucking validation bullshit that gets touted out, dude. Back to the original article, one notable endorsement of VirPed comes from Ray Blanchard. That's crazy! Even Redux noticed Ray Blanchard. A professor of psychiatry at the University of Toronto. Blanchard has helped to devise protocols and guidelines used internationally via his work with the American Psychiatric Association, which publishes the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. Blanchard served on the DSM-4 subcommittee on gender identity disorders in the early 1990s and was again appointed to the DSM-5 working group on gender and sexual identity disorders. Blanchard was also responsible for the DSM entry for pedophilia and conferred with self-described MAP activists associated with a group called Before You Act. Before You Act has campaigned for years to change and ultimately eliminate the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders entry on pedophilia. During a 2011 symposium titled Pedophilia, Minor Attracted Persons, and the DSM Issues and Controversies, hosted by Before You Act, co-founder Richard Kramer, who uses a pseudonym to conceal his identity, used results of anonymous surveys conducted with the participation of members of Before You Act in an attempt to establish that pedophilia is an innate identity that emerges in childhood. Well, no, because if you're a child and you have a crush on another child, that's just fucking normal. It's when you get older and you still have attraction to children that it's a problem. What did he mean by this? What did he fucking mean by this? Well, former Before You Act co-founder Melsheimer died in 2010. The co-founder and current head of Before You Act, Kramer, also has a long history of pro-pedophilia lobbying and has admitted to having a sexual attraction to boys. Prior to his involvement with Before You Act, Kramer operated a website called the Male Homosexual Attraction to Minors Information Center, which advocates favorably for what Kramer describes as feelings of sexual attraction that some men have for underage boys. The website notes a previous symposium addressing the issue of removing gender identity disorder and the paraphilias from the DSM. A move which would ultimately amount to depathologizing harmful forms of sexual behavior. Yeah, why the fuck would you do that, man? What did they mean by that? Yeah, but not for girls. Well, I mean, it was for gay men. So gay men aren't going to be molesting girls, right? You know? Why is it like 80% boys? That's a great question. Next question. Trying to make it an identity, which explains the maps thing. Well, I mean, they've been trying to make it an identity for ages because the map language has been around for a very long time. The new thing is the POCD. Like, POCD, I'm not, when I see people using that, I'm just like, I'm gonna side-eye you because I very much doubt you actually have an OCD that you're claiming to have. It sounds like it's in lockstep with the Child Protection Act legislation, making it easier to find children. I certainly fucking hope not. But goddamn, that was a, breaking news story, as it were. Jesus Christ. Who could have predicted that the director of a non-offending pedophile group could be charged with raping children? Wow! No one could have seen that coming. Completely unpredictable.